First time I saw Jimmy was 1965. Little Richard is the star of the bill. After the show, he is screaming, "You motherfucker, don't you ever play guitar with your teeth again, you mother..." And it was Jimmy.
Great advice. Don't you use those teeth, young man. How close did you come to forming that supergroup with Jimi Hendrix? Didn't he approach you after the Beatles broke up? He did not write a letter to you and said, "I want to get together with you."
Well, I never received it.
You might have done it.
I don't know, man. I mean, there's lots of what ifs, I certainly loved Jimmy. I certainly was one of the first people to see him in London, and it was mind-blowing,
Oh, you were there. You were part of that crowd, huh?
I was.
Was you Clapton?
Listen to this. I was in a club late at night. It's called the Bag of Nails, actually where I'm at, Linda. And you just go in there, and it was empty.
Yeah.
And I just heard this sort of clunking, clicking, a little stage in the corner. And I heard a sort of of like a loud jack plug being plugged into.
Somebody was plugging a guitar into an amp.
But a big amp. And it was, And I just thought, oh, who's that? And then just sort of turned away and talked to who I was talking to. And then it was Jimmy and Noel and Mitch. It was the Jimi Hendrix experience. In the corner. No one had heard him. And he did his whole act for virtually no one in the club.
But his act at the time was probably what we knew as the Jimi Hendrix Experience album, with Purple Haze and all that stuff.
Yeah, he's doing all that stuff, and I'm just
how far into his set do you suddenly go, wait a second, I hear something?
The first minute.
Really?
The first second he starts singing and playing.
Were you there with Clapton as the legend goes?
No, this was just kind of me with a couple of friends, late night, hardly anyone in the club. I think that was a Friday night, and on the Tuesday night, the word had got out. And now the club was steaming and packed for this new god in town.
I saw Jimi Hendrix when I was 14.
How do you do that? You buy a ticket to a show and you
bought a ticket. He played in Newcastle before he made it, actually. Before he had his first hit in England, which was Hey Joe.
Right.
He played the Club a Go-Go in Newcastle, and I must have been 15.
How did you know to go to that? I mean,
just on the, you just on the grapevine, you hear what's cool.
Did it blow your mind? Could it have been debilitating when you see a guy who's that proficient at guitar and writing music? Could you say to yourself, I could never fucking do this?
I thought I was seeing a Martian. I mean, there were very few black people in Newcastle.
Right.
He played left-handed Fender guitar with his hair and the clothes, and just freaked me out. Yeah.
When you see a guy like that, is it like with a painter? Do you go home and try to emulate him right away? Do you say, I've got to figure out how he does this?
No, the lesson was that you can be a rock star and a virtuoso at the same time.
Right.
Because he was, clearly.
The first time I saw Jimmy was 1965 at the Soupy Sales Easter show at the Paramount Theater in New York Square.
You are kidding me.
Right?
Wow.
That's crazy.
Wait, listen to this. Little Richard is the star of the bill, and we watched him. I mean, he was kick-ass. I mean, Little Richard is phenomenal, right?
Great entertainer.
One day, after the show, he comes out, he is screaming, "You motherfucker, don't you ever play guitar with your teeth again, you mother..." And it was Jimmy.
Great advice. Don't you use those teeth, young man. But then when you were in England, I guess, and all these guys, McCartney's there and Lennon and all that, all these guys who you know, you're all there to what? You had heard about him?
Oh, yeah. His reputation. Eric Clapton and particularly Pete Townsend had been spreading the word about this new kid from America, and that you better come and watch this kid because this is something special.
It was almost like going to school, right?
Yes. For guitar players, yeah.
Clapton said that night was it was almost detrimental to him. He felt like he wanted to put down his guitar after he saw Jimi Hendrix.
Well, thank God he didn't.
No, of course not. But it was that mind-blowing.
He was that mind-blowing.
Why was it so mind-blowing?
Because there was an incredible energy. Right. And there was only 3 of them in the experience. It was only Mitch Mitchell on drums and Noel Redding on bass.
Were Mitch and Noel good musicians?
Mitch was an incredible drummer. I don't think that Noel had played bass before he joined the experience.
That's what I've always heard.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so on the albums, Jimmy played all the instruments. That's what I've heard.
I still think that that Noel played bass and Mitch very much played drums, because Mitch Mitchell came to live with me in my apartment. He was... he didn't, they were just catching fire and he didn't have any place to live. So I'd come over and live with me. So then I was able to hang out with Mitch and hang out with Jimmy. And let me tell you something. Nobody in the world could beat Jimi Hendrix at Risk. You know the board game Risk?
Yeah, Risk, yeah.
He'd play Risk on acid You never stood a chance.
I always have this thought, like, if Jimi Hendrix had lived, would he have burned out, or would he have been still like one of the great rock acts?
I tend to believe that he would still have been one of the great rock acts because he was so ahead of his time.
So are you wearing a Jimi Hendrix T-shirt?
Yeah.
I was just talking to Graham Nash about Jimi Hendrix, one of the greats.
Oh, Jimi Hendrix belongs with Bach, Beethoven, and all the greatest musicians in history.
When you were serving, when you were a Navy SEAL,
Yep.
I bet you part of your soundtrack was Jimi Hendrix.
I actually saw Jimmy 1970 San Diego concert just months before he died.
Is that right?
Yep.
You were just in the audience, one of the fans?
Yeah, Jimi Hendrix.
Was he with the Experience at that point?
No, he was. The Experience had broken up. He had
that trio, the jazz thing going on.
No. He was doing his real stuff.
Right.
He had Buddy Miles, I think, on drums.
Right.
And he had broken up the Experience.
Did
by
he
that
do the
point.
classics like Purple Haze?
Oh, all of them.
He did them all.
Absolutely. Are
Oh,
you kidding? And the good part was, if you were in the military, you got discount on your tickets.
Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Were you
Because
in the military when you saw Jimi Hendrix?
Yes.
Oh, no kidding.
In fact, when I saw Jimmy, I was going through SEAL training. It's one of the great memories I have.
Who's the greatest guitar player? Was it Hendrix? Is that the boring answer?
He was first of all, he was so humble, but there's so many great, there's so many greats. I mean, what's so delightful about Hendrix, it was sort of like, first of all, it's sort of astounding. I don't understand what he was doing, but his feel and his groove was so great. But also, he was sort of allowing all this magic of his brilliance to shine, and he was sort of fearless. And that's part of what made him so great is that he wasn't. Not every step was careful. It was like this boldness, this freedom of, he didn't get up on stage and play a solo that he'd perfected. He got up on stage and just was like, this is what I got today, and that's unbelievable. There's some licks that he would repeat because they're part of the song, but then he could just fly, and that's a crazy courage.
Who was your guitar hero growing up?
Oh, geez, I had a lot of great guitar here. Hendrix.
Hendrix was truly one of a kind. What was it? It was.
He made it look so easy. He just had everything. He was just he was a great player, and the music of that time. I mean, you hear when I first heard Purple Haze, you go, hey,
whoa!
It's the sound.
It's a life changer.
Yeah, it's a life changer. When that album came out, that Are You Experience? I saved up my pocket money. I said, that's me.
Oh,
yes.
What an album!
Yes.
This is crazy. Joe was a football player, and what was it? You heard Hendrix, and you said, "Fuck, I want to play the guitar."
No, I'd been into Jimmy's records. Yeah, my older siblings were playing all this stuff, and I fell in love with the music at mid and late 60s, and I just became a Hendrix fan since 67. And but I wasn't really thinking about playing guitar. I'd been a drummer for about 3 years and then kind of gave it up. And then, I was on the football team. I was on the fitness team. I was on the track team, I'm not sure I was a very good football player. I was kind of small, but I was all suited up, and a teammate came out right as we were walking on the track and said, "Yeah, that guy Hendrix you like, he's dead," And so I just turned around, walked into the coach's office, and said, "I'm quitting football. I'm going to dedicate my life to playing guitar."
The great guitar players are the ones that come out with clear, concise notes. In other words, there's nothing mushy about it. It's like that's the note, and it's clean. Is that what we're going for?
Yeah. Any guitar player wants to play clean, and some guys, Stevie Ray Vaughan was really noisy. He shook it, his vibrato was so hard, it'd go, it made noises, but that was kind of cool, on the blues. But in general, you're trying to play a clean lick, and that's why guys like Joe and Eddie and, even Hendrix was noisy too, though, you got to admit.
Oh, yeah, but that was... Back in the day, those guys had, compared to what we have today, it was primitive equipment.
Joe, show me an example. Show me an example of what Sammy's talking about. What does a noisy Hendrix lick sound like? Show me something noisy that Hendrix did.
Well, he was doing a lot of pushing and pulling. So pushing and pulling would be like... I've cleaned it up, so I don't know if I can do it. But when you're pushing it, you're pushing the strings and pulling them and doing all that kind of stuff. You don't know what you're going to get. Today, I've got this thing here, so I can go. I can just keep going, But Jimmy didn't have those things. He'd have to turn the amp up and go hump the speakers, to get that kind of a sound.
Wow.
So, I mean,
it's amazing.
They really they laid the groundwork. Jimmy, he just rewrote the book for the electric guitar. He really did. And the thing is, he could improvise like a jazz musician. He was like Coltrane and Miles inside of a guitar player. So together with all that electric stuff, he had a mind to solo just like one of the greatest horn players or piano players. So that was the big difference there.
How did you become good friends with Jimi Hendrix? How did you come to know him?
By being easy and good friendly.
How do you run into a Jimi Hendrix? You were on the scene early on. You're both.
Actually, I met him. He was going on tour with the Monkees, and.
With the Monkees?
With the Monkees.
Was he opening for them?
This is going to last about 2 weeks, Jim. And but we went out to my house and played for 2 days. Yeah.
No kidding. You and Jimmy?
Yeah.
Was he a great guitar player?
The best.
The best. Is it true that you were being managed by someone who got so insecure? Jimmy sent word to your manager that he wanted you to be in the Jimi Hendrix Experience, that you would play guitar. It wasn't Noel Redding, it was you. And your manager did not tell you of this because he was afraid you'd leave Buffalo Springfield. True or false?
It wasn't Buffalo Springfield. It was CSN.
It was CSN.
And I was in Hawaii,
right,
nursing a broken wrist, which would have been ready in a couple of weeks. But they wanted me to come play bass until we found a new bass player. But Jimmy and I had been thinking about this, over in England for a while, and they didn't pass on the message. I've spent a lot of time being manipulated back into CSNY.
Wow.
It's unbelievable, right? Would you have done that? Would you have been a member of Jimi Hendrix's band had he gotten word to you?
Hell yes.
You would have. What a collaboration. You did collaborate with him, though, right?
Hell yes.
Is it a great disappointment to you that you never got to record that album with Jimi Hendrix, that you guys were going to collaborate? Is that a great disappointment in your life?
The one.
Did you ever meet Hendrix?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Did you ever get to play with him?
Not live.
Not live.
Backstage.
You went backstage. Where was this?
Youngstown, Ohio.
Back in the early 70s?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're what? Doing a concert?
Yeah.
James Gang concert at that point?
James Gang, Hendrix, and Sly and the Family Stone.
All on the same bill.
Wow. Well, remember in those days?
Wow, yeah.
You had 3 headliners on a show.
And who opened that show?
We did.
The James Gang.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What a show. So Hendrix is backstage. And what happened?
He's backstage. We're in a dressing room.
Oh.
Which is like where a hockey team changes or something,
not glamorous.
That, so, yeah. Right. We finished and we're in the same dressing room. So he's sitting playing his guitar and I come in with mine.
Right.
And
you have a jam session, so to speak.
A little bit, yeah. I showed him my guitar and he showed me his.
Do you get intimidated by a guy like that?
Nah, he was a wonderful guy. Of course I'm intimidated.
By his talent, I mean.
By him. He had an aura. I mean, he had feathers on. I mean, it was terrifying.
Well, you talk about that. I read that Clapton and a bunch of other guys at the time who were considered top guitarists all went to see Jimi Hendrix when he first came on the scene. They went to a club and they all looked at each other and they went, shit, we don't even really play the guitar.
What the hell are we doing?
What are we doing? That was the famous story.
Generally thought by the community. Yeah. What the hell are we doing?
Did you feel that way?
Yeah.
You did when you played with him. When you played with him, did he say, "Oh wow, Joe, maybe we should get together in a studio and do something together," or it never got that far?
No, never got that far. But he showed me his guitar, and I paid attention to how the heavy strings, light strings,
right.
How high are the strings? What's the action? Because he was a tough one, because he was left-handed.
Right.
So everything was backwards. That's why he sounded like that. None of us right-handed guitar players could do what he was doing.
Was he playing a lefty guitar?
No.
He was playing a right-handed guitar
upside
with his
down.
Upside down. Oh, wow.
That's why he sounded like that.
Are you
and
kidding?
That's why we couldn't cracked the code.
Oh my God, that's
See?
fascinating. Yeah,
That's why we were all hitting ourselves in the head.
But that's why you're a great guitar player, because you're a student.
Yeah.
Sitting with Jimi Hendrix, it's a master class.
Yeah.
Wow.
Even if it's 3 or 4 minutes.
Right.
And I had a Les Paul, and he looked at that, and he was really, really nice, and just a good guy.
When I read about you guys and your early beginnings and stuff like Billy, you were opening for Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
And you credit Hendrix with your guitar style. You say you learned a lot from him.
Yes, indeed. Somehow we got picked up early on.
Yeah.
And they were I wouldn't say straight shooters. But they weren't shooters at that point.
The experience, Hendrix and the experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what Jimmy was doing with that guitar was
crazy.
Yeah. The inventors never dreamed that he was doing things that they said. Well, they didn't say he can't do it. He just started doing it.
Where were you when you first saw him? Was it mind blowing?
Yeah, he was scary. And there is one interesting aside. He saw to it. I remember seeing this console record player being taken into the room night by night, and he saw to it that I had a room across the hall, and he called me in and he said, "Hey, yeah, what do you think about this?" And he was playing and learning by listening to a Jeff Beck's first record. He was listening to Beck.
But isn't that crazy? Like I don't think he had a guitar lesson in his life, or he was a true savant in a sense. I mean, he really was a genius.
Yeah, man.
And so what was the deal for you? You would just sit there and watch him play and pick up technique?
He said, "Do you know this?" And I said, "No, but keep on. I want to know this."
Yeah. And could you actually mimic some of the things that he was doing?
Yeah, he taught me the Foxy Lady.
Wow. That's really incredible. I had always heard a rumor, when you talk about Jimi Hendrix and the experience, that his bass player, Noel Redding, who I knew, was not really a bass player, that he was not very good. Is that fair to say?
He was the bottom end glue that worked, but he fancied himself more of he was a guitarist.
And did Jimmy play bass on those albums, or did Noel play bass on those albums?
Noel played.
He did?
On the first two.
Oh, all right, because it's an unfair rap that he always got, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know Jimi Hendrix?
Yeah, I met him at Monterey Pop.
Oh, no kidding.
In fact, we jammed together.
No kidding.
If you could call it. Me trying to keep up with him.
He plays such a different style that he's all over the place.
He was extraordinarily gifted guitarist. That's not a new piece of news.
Right.
But that's where I met him. I saw that show where he set his guitar on fire.
What did you make of that?
I thought it was an incredible act of showmanship.
Talk about Monterey Pop. When you guys played, you flipped a coin with Jimi Hendrix. And you said, whoever wins the coin toss, I guess, will go on first. That's how you determine. And The Who won the coin toss, so you guys got to go on first. And that's good, because you probably just wanted to get out of there, right?
Well, it wasn't just that. Unknown to most people, Jimmy actually, all that guitar smashing and all that stuff in the speakers, he had kind of copied that from Pete.
He did.
That was Pete's show in 1964-65, and Jimmy came over and saw it and just took the whole thing, took it to a different level.
He did, but he did take that from Pete.
That was all Pete's show, and of course we were going, if he goes on before us, he's done our show.
Right. Well, the thing was, Pete was the guy who used to smash his guitar and wreck it, and Jimmy said, "Uh-oh, I got to outdo him." So he lit his guitar on fire at Monterey, and then at Woodstock, of course, he lit his guitar on fire. And in a way, he got known for that. It had to irritate you a little bit.
It did. It did get up our nose a bit, but anyway, we won the toss, and we went on first. And sadly for Jimmy, by the time he got on, the last microphone was nearly broken. If you watch the film of Monterey, because it's all borrowed equipment, and you can see people rushing on to save microphones, save their drum kit.
It's so great. I just love it. Oh man, it's so crazy. I was thinking about Jimi Hendrix. Like, what the hell would he be doing now? You wonder, would he just be like completely out of it, or would he have continued to make great music? You just never know with people.
He'd be doing jazz. He was really getting into jazz when he
was moving in that direction.
He was really moving in that direction.
I know.
And Jimmy was very quiet, very, very philosophical, very poetic. Maybe he would have been a poet, a jazz poet.
Maybe. Who knows? It's such a shame, right?
Yeah.